Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. It's Brittany here with another video to help you guys live a happy, healthy, awesome life in a wheelchair. And today I am coming to you from sunny Mexico. I'm filming this video on the balcony of our hotel room. We're on holidays and we are going to talk about pressure ulcers. Sorry for my voice. I have a cold that I've been battling ever since we got to Mexico, which is super annoying. So my voice is really terrible and I've almost lost it a few times. So I'm going to try my best to talk normally through this video, but if my voice cracks or if it gets really weird for a bit, I apologize. This video is one in a series that I'm going to be doing in preparation for a YouTube live that I am doing with Blake Medical about how to choose a cushion. And I wanted you to have some information before that video all about pressure ulcers, how important your seating system is for preventing pressure ulcers. And then I'm going to talk about types of cushion materials, things that I just want you to be aware of before we talk about how to choose a cushion in that video, because the video is going to be an hour long, followed by a Q&A, but we aren't going to have enough time to go through every single aspect of choosing a cushion. So I wanted to make a series of videos before that, just so that you guys were sort of prepared for that live if you're interested in coming to it. It is on February 8th, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So noon Eastern Time is when you'll tune into that live. And I will be joined by Marky, who is an OT in Ontario that specializes in wheelchair seating. And she's going to be having a conversation with me all about my history with cushions and what could have been done better, what was done properly, and then just sort of give some education about how to properly choose a cushion and how you can be best supported by a OT or a healthcare practitioner that specializes in seating. So this video, now that I'm done that whole spiel, this video is all about pressure ulcers, and I wanted to talk about them because I wanted to basically educate you on how important it is to have a really quality cushion so that you prevent pressure ulcers. There's a little boy or a little girl crying on the walking path downstairs. So I apologize for any of the noise that you might hear in the background. Okay, let's get started with this video. First of all, I'll tell you sort of what I'm going to answer in this video. And the questions that I'm going to go over in this video are: what is a pressure ulcer? Why should preventing a pressure ulcer matter to you? What causes a pressure ulcer? Actually, they're pressure injuries. They're pressure injuries. If I've been calling them pressure ulcers, they're pressure injuries. Pressure injuries, not pressure ulcers. So I'll explain what pressure injuries are and what types there are, but they're pressure injuries. So if I've called it something else before this, it's pressure injury, not pressure ulcer. Okay, questions. What is a pressure injury? Why is preventing a pressure injury important? What causes a pressure injury, the stages of pressure injuries, and then how to prevent pressure injuries. So let's get started with question number one. What is a pressure injury? Well, the NPIAP, which is the National Pressure Injury Advisory Panel, I think. Oh my God, I mess this up every time. What is it? National Pressure Injury Advisory Panel. Yeah, I had that right. So the National Pressure Injury Advisory Panel defines a pressure injury as localized damage to the skin and or underlying tissue as a result of pressure or pressure in combination with shear. And we're going to talk about what the differences between those two things are. Pressure injuries usually occur over a bony prominence, but may also be related to a medical device or other object. Tolerance may be affected by microclimate, perfusion, which is circulation, age, health status, comorbidities, and conditions of the soft tissue. So that is basically what a pressure injury is. Why should preventing a pressure injury be important to you? Well, people with spinal cord injuries are one of the largest groups of people affected by pressure injuries. And get this is a study that I looked up, a meta-analysis, which is basically a study of multiple studies. So it's just gathering all of the studies that currently exist and finding out the information within those studies and then making some judgments based on those studies. So a meta-analysis of 24 studies from around the world with over 600,000 participants found that the global pooled magnitude of pressure ulcers among patients with spinal cord injury was 32.36%, What that means is that at any given time, among the population of people with spinal cord injuries in the world, like globally, 30% of people are dealing with a pressure injury. So right now, say there's like 1 million people with spinal cord injuries around the world. 300,000 of those people currently have a pressure injury. That is a huge population within a small subgroup of people to have to be dealing with a specific injury or illness. So that's a big problem. We need to be paying attention because this is a huge thing that affects a lot of us with spinal cord injuries, and we need to know how to not have it affect us because they are actually deadly. It's not just like a little problem that you can go to the doctor and get fixed. If a pressure injury gets bad enough, it can cause osteomyelitis, which is a bone infection, and it can cause sepsis, which is a blood infection. And both of those things, if they get bad enough, can be fatal. So this is a big deal. I've had a number of friends die from pressure injuries, and it basically doesn't discriminate. I had a friend that was 24 die of a pressure injury. I had a friend die when he was 75 of a pressure injury. So this is something that you can get at any age if you're not really careful. It's definitely easier to get as you get older because your skin loses integrity as we age, but it's really important no matter what age you are. And they're really easy to prevent with the right lifestyle tactics. So we'll talk about some of those at the end of this video. Okay, so how do pressure injuries form? Well, pressure injuries form basically in combination with two forces. One is pressure and two is friction. And then when you combine pressure and friction, it's something called shear. So what exactly is pressure? Pressure is the downward force that is applied by gravity, essentially. So I'm sitting here, gravity is applying force on me, and that force is translating to pressure on whatever support surface I'm sitting on. A support surface, by the way, is just anything that is supporting the weight of your body. So it can be a mattress, a cushion, any of those things. And right now, my support surface is my cushion. So I have pressure where any of my butt is touching a surface. And it's also where my feet are touching my foot plate, if the back of my leg is touching anything. But generally, pressure is created from downward, the downward force created by gravity or applied by gravity. And then any sort of directional force that's applied by something your skin is touching, like your shoes or anything like that. So that's pressure. What is friction? So friction is basically the bi-directional force created when two things rub against each other. And that is a force that has consequences if it is too high. So there's something called a coefficient of friction. And when you rub anything together, it has some sort of friction, and you can have little friction or a lot of friction. And if you have a lot of friction, it can create cuts or scratches. And friction is created when you move your body and your body is sort of sticking to something according to that coefficient of friction. So that's friction. And then shear is a combination of pressure and friction. When shear happens, your skin is generally, how this works, sticking to something, and the inside parts of your body are still able to move. So your bony prominences are able to move. So let's say your butt is sticking to something, and right now it's really humid out. My butt is sticking to my cushion because of that coefficient of friction, or my skin is sticking to my cushion according to that coefficient of friction, but I want to move my butt forward, or I'm going to lean sideways. My skin is still sticking to my cushion, but my pelvis is going to move within my body, and the force that is actually moving against each other is inside my body. So the tissue inside my body is shearing against each other. So my bone against muscle, or my bone against soft tissue, and sometimes maybe your bony prominence can be staying in place, but somebody is trying to slide you, so your skin moves with the thing that it is stuck to, and then your skin moves this way and your bony prominence is staying in place, so it's moving against each other. One tissue is staying in place, another tissue is moving, and it might be your skin staying in place and your bony prominence is moving, or your bony prominence staying in place and your skin being yanked in another direction. So that's shear, and it's a combination of the pressure moving, the downward pressure, and the bidirectional pressure, or the bidirectional force of friction. Downward pressure and the bidirectional frictional forces that are happening. So that's the three things that essentially create a pressure injury: pressure, friction, and shear, which is a combination of pressure and friction. The first two, pressure and friction, are outside in injuries. So you can see them on the skin before they get worse. If you scratch your butt because it's scraped against something, or you have a pressure sore starting, it'll look red on the outside, and the damage goes farther in as the pressure sore gets worse. Same with friction. If you have a pressure injury caused by friction, it will be seen on the outside of the skin, and then it can get worse because cell damage happens and lack of oxygen happens. And when lack of oxygen happens, skin dies. So both of those things can get worse once they've started, but you can see them at the beginning of the injury on the outside of the skin. And shear is a different type of pressure injury that can sometimes go unnoticed because it's inside. When your tissues rub against each other on the inside, you can't necessarily see it on the outside. So you might get something called a deep tissue injury. So you might just see a bruise or something like that instead of actually a red mark or a cut. But it's still considered a pressure injury. So you have to be really careful with shear because it might not show up the way a traditional pressure injury starts with a red mark. And we're going to talk about the stages of pressure injuries and what to look for with the different stages. But shear is one that you have to be really careful and watch for because it just doesn't necessarily always show up, even though there is tissue damage. Okay, now we are going to move on to what factors contribute to the development of a pressure injury. So there's lots of different factors that contribute to the development of a pressure injury. Some of them are intrinsic factors that are that stem from our body, and some are extrinsic factors that stem from the environment that our body is sitting on. So we'll talk about what those are. The intrinsic factors are things like how mobile you're able to be, impaired sensation, so how much sensation do you have on your body, how well can you feel when you are sitting too long and the blood flow starts to stop, age-related skin changes. So I talked about in the beginning of this video that the older you get, your skin integrity declines. So that's another intrinsic factor. Postural deformities. So if you have like a scoliosis, or you have your pelvis is tilted or anything like that that's creating more pressure on one side than the other, that's another thing that can contribute to the development of a pressure ulcer. Urinary and fecal incontinence. So we'll talk about it a little bit later in this video, but microclimate of your skin is really important. So the moisture level on your skin and around your skin is important. And if you have urinary and fecal incontinence, that is creating an unfavorable microclimate for your skin, and it can also contribute to the development of a pressure injury. Obesity, obviously, if you are creating more pressure because you are a heavier person, then that is going to contribute to pressure injuries. Being underweight is also really bad because if you have less tissue on your butt because you don't have enough weight on your body, then your bony prominences are going to stick out more, and that's going to create a problem. So being overweight and being underweight is not good. So being a optimal weight is really important, especially if you're in a wheelchair full time, and it's even harder to be an optimal weight when you are in a wheelchair, so that's kind of a catch-22. Limited alertness is another one of those intrinsic factors. So if somebody is not alert and doesn't really know that their skin is hurting, it's the same thing as limited sensation. It just stops you from being able to know when something is going wrong. Muscle spasms can create pressure on different parts of your body. If your leg is constantly spasming or kicking into your foot plate or any other surface, then it can create a risk for a pressure injury. Smoking and other medical conditions that might affect blood flow. So just anything that's going to decline your health is going to obviously be one of those intrinsic factors that can contribute to the development of a pressure injury. So those are the intrinsic factors, things that are related to our body. And then the extrinsic factors are factors stemming from the environment that our body is seated on or laying on or just in contact with. And these things are pressure, shear, and microclimate. So obviously pressure is where are the pressure points in the thing that you're sitting on. Is your wheelchair appropriate? Is your backrest appropriate? Does your seating system have abnormal pressure points that need to be addressed? Shear is one of those things. Is your wheelchair too wide? I know I had a problem with my wheelchair being too wide at one point, and so every time I bent over, there was so much space on one side that my butt literally had the room to move really when I bent over, and that created shear. So just outside factors that are going to create more pressure or shear, those things are extrinsic factors that you really need to be watching for, and your cushion is a huge part of both of those extrinsic factors, because your cushion is something that's going to prevent pressure and shear from happening. So that is why that you need to be able to choose an appropriate cushion, and why I think this video was an important one leading up to it, because your cushion is one of the big extrinsic factors in creating a environment that's either conducive to a pressure sore developing or not conducive to a pressure sore developing. And then the last one that's an extrinsic factor is microclimate. We talked about that a little bit earlier, and that is things like your skin temperature and your skin, the moisture around your skin. So you're just like climate anywhere, it's climate around your skin, and that is really important. Why is microclimate so important? Well, I'm so glad you asked. I will tell you. Oh, my notes moved all the way in the wrong spot. Just give me a second. Okay, so microclimate is so important because a raised skin temperature, and I don't think I talked about this really fully, I sort of touched on it, but the reason that pressure sores form is because there is a lack of oxygen, and a lack of oxygen creates cell death if your body is deprived of the oxygen that your cells need to live. And when that cell death happens, then pressure injuries form. And when you raise your skin temperature, your metabolism of those cells increases, just because that's what happens when you're hotter. Your metabolism burns faster when you're hotter, and your skin and your whole body when you're hotter needs more oxygen. And when you have a higher skin temperature, because your skin needs more oxygen, the lack of oxygen creates a pressure injury faster. So it doesn't necessarily like cause a pressure injury, but it can increase the timeline for a pressure injury to form, because your skin is requiring more oxygen that it's not getting if you have sustained pressure over a certain area for a period of time. So skin climate, the temperature can increase your risk of a pressure ulcer, and then moisture increases the coefficient of friction. So we all know if you have a sticky butt, it's hard to get things up, like hard to get your pants up. It makes your skin, it increases that coefficient of friction. So your skin is gonna stick to stuff more, and if your skin sticks to stuff more, your risk of a friction injury or your risk of a shear injury is way higher. So moisture and temperature are things that you should be paying attention to all the time. You shouldn't have clothes that make you sweat. You shouldn't have a cushion that doesn't breathe. You shouldn't be wearing things that moisture just like stays in, and especially for a really long time. So if you have incontinence, you should be changing your clothes often, or you should be wearing incontinence products that pull the moisture away from your skin, so that it's not just there all the time. So those things are really important to pay attention to in terms of your extrinsic factors that can contribute to the development of a pressure injury. One of the other things that creates a higher risk for pressure injury, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is disease and aging. And that's really just because any disease and aging reduces your skin integrity, and your skin thickness actually reduces as you age. So every 10 years, your skin thickness reduces by 6.4%, which is why old people have like paper thin skin. And if you have paper thin skin, you have less tissue, healthy tissue for for your cells, and cell death means that your skin layers are dying faster. So when we talk about the stages of pressure injuries, which we're actually going to get into right now, then you'll see that pressure injuries get worse as they go into further and further tissue layers. And if your tissue layers are thinner, then obviously a pressure injury can develop faster because it's eating up tissue faster because the layers are thinner. Okay, so now that we've talked about what causes a pressure injury, what a pressure injury is, why it should matter, let's talk about the stages of pressure injuries. I'm not gonna go into great depth about each stage and how to treat it and what to look for and all that stuff. I'm just gonna talk about the stage of the pressure sore, basically the level of tissue that's affected, a few things to look for, and how long it would take to heal if you left it to get that bad. Because I think that's an important thing to talk about with every stage of pressure sore. Because I'm going to reiterate right now, or I'm going to say, and then I will reiterate at the end, that if you catch a pressure injury early, it's way better than just letting it get horrible. So let's talk about the stages of pressure injuries. Okay, stage one. Actually, let's just talk about the layers of tissue that are going to be affected before we talk about the staging. So there is your skin layer, there is soft tissue, there's muscle, and then there's bone. So in a stage 1 pressure sore, your skin, just the skin, is affected, and it is not open. So it is a red mark. It does not blanch, which means when you press on it, it doesn't turn white, it stays red. That shows a lack of circulation. All pressure sores are basically treated by removing the pressure. It doesn't matter what the pressure level is or the injury level is, you just have to remove the pressure in order for it to go away, because you can't heal something by keeping pressure on it, because you're just reducing the blood flow, and your body needs blood in order to get nutrients and oxygen and all that stuff to form new tissue. So you have to remove the pressure and basically just stay off of it for a few days. If you stay off of a stage 1 pressure injury, it can heal within about 3 days, maybe up to a week if you're a slow healer, but up to 3 days, or 3 days to up to a week, and your pressure injury is going to go away. That's for stage 1. So if you let your pressure injury get to stage 2, or you don't notice that you have a pressure injury and you notice it at stage 2, stage 2 is still the skin layer, but it is a broken, it is an open skin wound. So it is now broken through the top layer of your skin, and sometimes it hasn't quite broken through. It might be a blister, but it is a fluid-filled blister that you can see. The skin is affected underneath, so it's either open or it's a blister that's gonna pop. Again, you are going to remove the pressure. You might have to get a doctor to look at it or a wound care nurse to look at it at this stage. And if it is open, you're probably gonna get it dressed properly, just making sure that it's clean. And if you have a stage 2 pressure injury, it can heal anywhere from 3 days to 3 weeks. So if you're a fast healer and it's a tiny little pressure sore, if it's a friction injury, something like a scratch, then it can heal really fast as long as you're staying off of it. But it can take up to 3 weeks. So even just getting up to a stage 2 pressure sore can be really, really inconvenient, because 3 weeks is a long time to have to stay out of your chair. You might not have to stay out of your chair all day, every day, but you have to stay out of your chair for a significant amount of time so that you remove the pressure from wherever the pressure injury is. Stage 3 pressure injuries have moved beyond the skin layer and they have gone into the soft tissue, so like the fat and the connective tissue below your skin layer. And when it's at that stage, then you definitely have to have it looked at by a doctor. Again, you're going to remove the pressure, and the pressure injuries at this level can take up to 4 months to heal. So one to 4 months to heal, which is an extremely long time. And I believe at this point you're worried about infection, and you are potentially looking at surgery if the wound isn't healing properly. So stage 3, super inconvenient, takes a very long time to heal. And then stage 4 pressure injuries are when the injury has gone beyond skin and soft tissue and it moves into muscle and bone, which is really, really, really bad, because that's when you start getting that risk of osteomyelitis, which is that bone infection. You can have risk of sepsis. Really, it doesn't matter what injury level or what pressure, what stage it's at. It doesn't really matter what stage it's at, other than like the first stage, because it's not an open wound. But stage 2, 3, 4, you're all looking at a potential for sepsis. You can get sepsis from a friggin' paper cut. So sepsis is a danger no matter what, but it gets really dangerous if you have a stage 4 pressure sore. It's extremely painful when it gets to that point. If you can feel, you start having to get things like debridement, where they're starting to take dead tissue away so that the healthy tissue doesn't rot, which is really nasty. And at this point, you're looking at 3 months to 2 years to heal. So this is not just a small problem. Getting to a stage 4 pressure sore is extremely, extremely inconvenient. And most of the time you're looking at surgery, something called a flap surgery, which is basically like a skin graft, I believe, to heal that area. So don't get there. You don't want to get there, because it's extremely dangerous, and the potential for fatality grows as the pressure sore gets worse. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4, those are the different stages. Stage 1 and 2, that's just the skin level. Stage 3 starts to move into soft tissue, and then stage 4 moves into muscle and bone, and that's really bad news. Unstageable pressure sores are ones that are covered by a hard plaque. I don't even know how to say this word, eschar. It's the hard brown or black, brown, or tan plaque that can cover a pressure sore sometimes. And then slew, I think, is the debris that appears tan, yellow, green, or brown, that can be covering sort of the wound and make it hard to stage. So some pressure sores are hard to stage, and they're considered unstageable. The other thing that I'll mention again here is that deep tissue injury that can happen when you have shearing, and it's when your inside tissue moves against each other. So your bony prominences, like your pelvis, is moving inside stationary tissue and against the soft tissue inside your body, and that can create a soft tissue injury and be hard to actually notice until it gets really bad. So shearing is really important, and again, having a quality cushion, making sure your wheelchair is appropriate, the size of your wheelchair is appropriate, making sure the way you're moving is appropriate to reduce shear is really important, because those ones are inside out injuries and not outside in injuries, and they're hard to notice. Okay, now that we've talked about staging, I think the last thing that I want to talk about is how to prevent pressure injuries. Obviously, the number one thing I'm going to talk about to prevent a pressure injury is having an appropriate seating setup, because obviously I'm doing a live all about how to choose an appropriate cushion, because I think it's so important. For years, I dealt with inappropriate cushion choices, and we're going to talk about that in the YouTube live that I'm going to do with the OT, and why I had inappropriate cushions and what the results were of my inappropriate cushions. But if you have an inappropriate wheelchair, if your wheelchair is too big, that creates opportunities for shear. If your cushion is inappropriate and the wrong material, that creates opportunities for pressure and friction. And just ultimately, it creates a breeding ground for pressure injuries if you don't have a proper seating setup. And a proper seating setup consists of a good backrest, a good cushion, and an appropriate wheelchair. So I have lots of videos about how to choose an appropriate wheelchair. I'm going to do this whole series on cushions, and then we'll end with this live with an actual OT ready to answer your questions about choosing a cushion. Any support surface that your body is up against, your mattress, your shower chair, any of those things, you should be paying attention to the opportunities for friction and pressure, because anything your body touches essentially can contribute to a pressure injury if you're not careful. I was sitting on the toilet without a supportive surface for a really long time. until my butt couldn't handle it anymore, and I noticed that I was getting a red mark on my tailbone. Then it was no bueno, and I had to then start looking at a different support surface for my toilet so that I would not get a pressure sore. So anything your body touches for any significant period of time needs to be a well thought out surface, I guess, so that you're not creating opportunities for a pressure injury. Okay, so the next things that I have on my list are eat healthy. You can't prevent a pressure sore without having appropriate nutrition, because your body needs certain minerals and vitamins and macronutrients in order to build healthy tissue. So you need protein, you need zinc, you need vitamin A, you need all kinds of vitamins and minerals in combination with one another, collagen, in order to be able to have healthy tissue. So eating healthy is really important. It's also important for weight management. And we talked about earlier, being underweight is bad, and also being overweight is bad. So eating healthy is really important for quality skin and for your skin integrity. Staying hydrated. You can't have skin integrity without your cells being hydrated. It's kind of like having a well-inflated balloon versus a deflated balloon. A deflated balloon is going to be easier to have a pressure injury on something that's deflated, because it's just not as supple and thick, and it's not able to handle as much pressure. Managing incontinence, again, that manages the microclimate of your skin. You can't have moist skin all the time, otherwise it's going to contribute to the coefficient of friction, or increase the coefficient of friction, and that's going to increase your chances of having a shear injury or a friction injury. So making sure that your skin is dry, and not to mention the acidity of urine, all of those kinds of things, the bacteria in fecal incontinence. So just making sure that you are managing incontinence. Doing pressure lifts. No seating setup, no cushion, backrest, or appropriate wheelchair is going to prevent a pressure injury all by themselves. You have to be able to do pressure lifts. You have to be able to move the pressure off of some area, whether it be a power chair that you can tilt, or like me, just doing a pressure lift with my hands. You have to be able to get the pressure off of the area multiple times a day so that the blood flow can be restored. So doing pressure lifts, however that looks for you. Check your skin. This cannot be overstated. This is probably, next to having a good seating setup that reduces pressure, this is probably the second most important thing. You can't prevent a pressure injury if you're not checking for pressure injuries, especially if you have a lowered sensation. I can't feel my butt, so I don't know when something is going awry on my skin. I have to check it. And I don't care if you're embarrassed or it's hard for you, find a way to do it, because that is extremely important when you have lower sensation and you're sitting on your butt all day, or you're laying on your butt all day, whatever it is, whatever surface you're on for sustained periods of time. And especially if you can't feel, you have to be checking the skin that's touching something. I get my husband to check my butt, even though I have a god-awfully ugly butthole that he has to stare right at. I don't care. I want him to check my skin on my butt, especially if I am having a hard time seeing whether something looks different. Because sometimes something might look red to me, but it's not actually that red. Or yeah, I just get somebody to check your skin. Check your skin in general, because it's important every day, not like once in a while, every day. Yeah, those are all of the things. So have appropriate support surfaces: cushion, backrest, wheelchair, mattress, shower chair, toilet seat, whatever it is that your skin is touching. Have appropriate support surfaces that are reducing pressure. Eat healthy, stay hydrated, manage incontinence, do pressure lifts, and God, check your skin every single day. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Okay. Pressure injuries, super important. They form because of pressure and friction, and the combination of pressure and friction, which is called shear. The stages of them are 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 4 is the one that you absolutely don't want to get to, because it takes up to 2 years to heal. If you catch a pressure sore or pressure injury at the first stage, then it's like 3 days. Just stay off your butt for 3 days. Anybody can stay off their butt for 3 days. I don't care if you're busy. you can stay off your butt for 3 days. Find a way to stay off your butt for 3 days rather than trying to stay off your butt for 2 years, 4 months, whatever the timeline is when you get a way higher stage pressure sore. Yeah, that's it. If you want to join the live that I'm going to be doing on February 8th, you can go to the link in the description of this video. It will actually take you to the live that I have scheduled on YouTube, and there is a little notification bell that you can click that will allow you to be notified when we are going live so that you don't miss it. Again, it's going to be with an OT specializing in wheelchair seating, and we are going to do basically a conversation about my history with cushions, and then she is going to stay on with me after to do a Q&A. The live is going to be moderated by Blake Medical, a representative from Blake Medical, because we will be doing a giveaway for a Blake Medical gel product. So stay till the end if you want to be part of that giveaway. I hope to see you guys all there. I'm sorry for my voice. Stay tuned for the next videos in this series. There's going to be another one coming up next week about cushion materials and the types of cushion materials that are available on the market today. And then I'm hoping that I can do one on the science of pressure redistribution, because I'm always confused about how a support surface redistributes pressure under my butt. How does that happen? So I'm hoping to be able to get that one done too, but for sure it will be this one and the one on cushion materials. That's all I got for you guys today. I hope to see you at the live. Bye guys.